Good morning.
Oh, I can't see them though.
Oh, yeah, we can't put them.
Good morning. They have their
Good
mics
morning.
on.
Hello.
Hi, Scott.
Hi there. You don't have to turn those on. We don't have to use these. This turns it on, right? Good. Okay.
It's 10 o'clock in Sacramento. Are you guys ready?
It's 10 o'clock here too. We're ready.
We are ready.
Okay.
Well,
Awesome. Okay.
like to welcome everyone to our collaborative inspection approach to field inspection subcommittee meeting, formerly the Inspect to Pass approach. Welcome everyone and thank everyone for being here. We'll go ahead and turn it over to Veronica for roll call and meeting advisories expectations.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michael. Good morning, everyone. Today is February 27th, 2025. I will begin with roll call. Michael Davis.
Here.
Cody Bartley. Gary Dunger. Scott Mackey.
Here.
Okay, thank you. We have a quorum at this time. I'll continue on with HPI staff, Elizabeth Lansford, Chris Tokus, Richard Tannehill, Arash Al-Tuntash, Andy F. Arzame, here. Monica Colosi, Joe Labrie.
Here.
Perfect, thank you, Joe. And that concludes roll call. I'll move on to, oh, I'm sorry, Bert.
Here.
I don't know how I missed you. I had to check off too. Thank you. That's Bert Hurlbut. Now I'll move on to meeting expectations for those.
Hey, Veronica, can I ask a quick question? You said we had a quorum. What? It didn't seem like we did.
Michael, Scott, and Bert.
We do. We have three.
Missing Cody and Gary, so we have 3 out of 5.
Okay. And remote or not remote doesn't matter. Is that right?
Remote does not count as part of the quorum.
So we have who we need in person. Okay, just double check. Thank you.
That's okay. No problem. Okay, meeting expectations for those attending virtually. Please mute your audio when not speaking. Do not use the hold function on your phone. For all attendees, please hold all comments until the end of each presentation. If you have any comments, there are 2 options. 1, send a message using the chat icon located on the top right of the screen on Teams. Or 2, raise your hand by selecting the reactions icon also located on the top right of Teams. Committee and HPI staff must identify themselves before speaking. Public members do not, but can address themselves by name as a member of the public or interested party. Any voting will be done through roll call by the executive director. And that concludes meeting expectations. And I see that Mr. Tokus has joined us, so I will mark him as present. Thank you. I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair.
All right, Michael Davis, member of the committee and board. Thank you, Veronica. Let's move on to item number 3, our first item for consideration on the agenda today. And that was to be a progress review of the development of the material of the presentation outline. As you'll recall, in our last meeting, we left off that I would be working on the inspector of record and testing lab info, Gary Dunger working on ownership, Scott was going to work on the design professional record, Cody for contractor and subcontractors, and then Monica and Joe would be looking at the OSHPD field staff side of things, with Monica being the presenter at the end of the day. So our first item here on the progressive review is, let's consider the IOR and testing lab. That was the part that we have been looking at for some period of time prior to us expanding this presentation to include all of the parties. But I just wanted to kind of go over with the group a couple of questions. And if these questions are not exhaustive or comprehensive enough to meet the intent, we could add questions for future consideration. These questions are just meant to bring out information on on that particular role's contribution to a collaborative inspection approach. So one thing that we talked about was we wanted to make sure that we defined collaborative inspection approach, or the inspect to pass phrase, clearly for each role. So the first bullet point there is, what does a collaborative inspection approach mean to IOR in the testing lab? And the input that I had on that is, this is an inspection that you have worked together proactively with the contractor and with the designer to ensure that the final product is in compliance with the approved drawings and any applicable code items related to it. And it's successful, especially if it's approved on the first pass, not repeated attempts. So we can see how all the different parties play a role in that. When we are delivering the collaborative inspection approach webinar, the first thing I would suggest that we do when presenting the IOR information is define that. Use some examples, probably. Then we move on to the basic idea of why it's important. So we think about that. Why is it important? Well, it's important because this is how we move the project along. Our objective at the end of the day for all of us, regardless of our role, is to create or build a safe, sustainable building, safe for the patients, safe for the employees, safe for the public, that will endure and do so in a way that complies with all the code sections and OSHPD's plan review, all the pillars of good quality control, quality assurance. So it's important to have to supply that to the public. Therefore, it's important that we work together collaboratively to make that happen. That's where I see it as being important. The third bullet point, how can the IOR testing lab manifest a collaborative inspection approach on projects? That's when I would suggest going into some specifics of what collaborating with the team means. The IOR should not sit in his trailer in isolation, away from everything, just doing his own thing. The team should welcome him and engage him as a team member. And the IOR should, in turn, act like a team member, being, willing to collaborate and never weaponizing the inspections. That's something that we found from time to time. When animosities develop on the site, an IORs have in the past weaponized their inspections against the contractor, against the architect. The IOR needs to realize he's working under the direction of the architect per Title 24 Part 1. So the architect is the one making the decisions on the calls on what the drawings mean. Only he can interpret the drawing. The IOR can't. So don't try to do that. So there's a number of aspects that could be elaborated on when it comes to how to manifest a collaborative approach. Participating in the meetings, welcoming the OSHPD field staff and being transparent with them, being transparent with the contractor as you walk the site proactively. If you see something wrong, bring it to the attention of the contractor immediately. Don't wait until you get an inspection request. That's just very wasteful. So there's a number of aspects to bring out. The fourth bullet point, what are some obstacles to success and how to overcome them? Obstacles to success, speaking as an IOR right now, I would say one obstacle to success is an inexperienced contractor. That takes a lot more work on the part of the IOR, but it shouldn't be something that stops you. Everybody has to start somewhere, right? And it's nothing wrong with the contractor having a lack of experience. It's just going to take more for them to learn how to handle things. And the IOR should assist them in any way he can, procedurally, with what needs to be done on the site and with the field staff. Another obstacle could be in a disengaged or disinterested design professional. I learned from my own experience. Joe's sitting here, my first two major projects. Joe was there every time with the DSC, walking together. And that's kind of how I learned and observed how Joe handled those situations. I went on to my next project alone and did not have Joe on that project. And my structural engineer was only there, I think, one time. And I was telling the DSC what happened here. I can't answer your questions. They're structural questions. And he said, well, Joe spoiled you by being there and doing all this. So for an IOR, not having a design professional present or highly active, which is rare in my experience, is an obstacle to success. Another could be ownership that is pressuring the IOR to approve something to get the doors open quickly when the product is not truly compliant. Those are just 3 examples, the big ones that come to my mind. So I think that we should use some examples such as that as part of that element of it. But my overall point here is that with each one of the parties, the testing lab, IOR, ownership, design professional, etc., we could kind of go through a pattern like this. We need to begin by defining what it means to that party. Why is it important to that party and the whole? How can that party contribute to a collaborative inspection approach? And then what are some obstacles that particular party faces uniquely? If everybody feels that's a good approach, we can move forward. If we have other ideas, I want to open it up to discussion. Any ideas on how we approach it? Or if there's some very specific things that we feel should be included when it comes to the IOR and testing lab that I could make note of and include in my outline as the one handling this part. So I'd like to open that up to our committee now for consideration.
So Scott Mackey, member of the committee. Mike, I think it's important. You speak a lot about it, inspector of record, because that's where your background and experience is, but it's inspector of record / testing lab.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get some examples of testing lab into this discussion.
Yeah.
Because, not as day-to-day responsible as the IOR is, but still can impact these with the process for one, for sure, but also can impact why is it important and how did we manifest this approach, et cetera. So try and keep that in mind, that the testing lab side of it really needs to be built into the discussion and examples.
Okay, very good, thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, this is Bert Hurlett, member of the board. I think we might want to just stress up front, why would we want to do inspect to pass or collaborative inspection or whatever? And I think it's the benefits that is derived from it. And I think that the party that gains probably the most benefit is the owner, that he's getting a project that, he knows is compliant. And if he's got good inspections, the schedule is going to be pretty close to what it should be. So I think that's got to be stressed to say, why would we want to do this? Well, the reason is that it comes out best for the owner. The owner's going to pay a lot of money for it also. So it's not, this doesn't come free. So he's got to pay more money for, to make sure all the bases are covered all the time. So I think there's a cost there, but there's definitely a benefit. We just have to stress that.
Thank you, Bert.
That's it.
Thank you. Michael Davis, member of the board. Perhaps because the benefit is universal to the project, maybe in the introduction, because we want to arouse interest, we want to show why it's important, right? Maybe the introduction should have a heavy focus on the benefits of this approach. Any thoughts on that? I would suggest we emphasize it in the intro and we re-emphasize it in the conclusion. So it's almost like a sandwich. We get everybody interested with that. We give them the meat of the matter. Then we close with reviewing and enforcing those benefits.
This is Scott Mackey, member of the committee. Since I'm responsible to arouse interest, and break down barriers. Yes, these are definitely the key aspects of what this introduction will be focused on. Is what is the benefit to the project? What's the benefit to the owner? What impacts does it have to the cost of the project and therefore to the owner? But it's also about defining, what does a successful inspection look like? And why it requires more than just effort on the IOR's part, that it's a team effort involving everyone, the DPOR, the owner, the contractor, as well as the IOR and the testing lab.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Bert, for pointing out that, yes, we need to highlight the true benefits of what this concept is and what the outcome will be at the end of the project.
Any other thoughts?
How do we get there? How do we do it? Okay, Scott, you're the man.
All right. Well, if there's no further thoughts when it comes to the IOR and testing lab, obviously there's more for me to do, as that being my particular assignment, to refine that and get examples, flesh that out. But that's the basic direction that we're going in. I just wanted to make sure everyone was in agreement that this is a good way to approach it. And we're not alienating anyone in the process or seem like we're overly picking on someone. We want everyone to walk away encouraged and motivated from this webinar, not feel picked on.
Question, Joe Labrie, Hodgepod. So the question I have for the group is there any, I mean, I hesitate to even throw it on the table, but is there a benefit at all to talk about consequences if you don't, if a project team doesn't follow this approach? Is that counterproductive to talk, or is it just so obvious? Like, okay, your project's gonna be over budget, everybody's gonna be fighting, it's gonna be, late in delivery, whatever, right?
Scott Mackey, member of the committee. Joe, I think that information will come out through each person's component. Honestly, I don't want to stress on that because I do think it's somewhat obvious. The value and benefit of this particular event is to emphasize collaboration and working together as a team. Those challenges will be highlighted by each and every one of the presenters. But I don't want to set it aside as being a component that says, yeah, if you don't do these things, these boom, 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 these are all the things that are going to happen to you. I'd rather have it a positive approach, but not avoiding those things that, that we have used as examples, things that we've seen in the field, and what the, negative outcome of that approach can be. And I think it's about dancing around the subject matter like we did with the name, okay? Didn't want to call it inspect to pass because that could have negative connotations. We're focusing on a collaborative approach because we really want to generate that momentum and that enthusiasm for a collaborative style of working together as a team. Does it make sense? I mean, I do think we will hit those points. I just don't want to pull it out and make it an obvious black eye kind of a thing,
Yeah, completely understand.
Okay.
Yep.
Michael Davis, member of the board. I think that some of the examples that I have been recalling from my own experience will kind of highlight that incidentally, as a side effect. I'll give you one example. We had a couple of IORs working with us who had created an internal contest with themselves who each day could find the most impactful thing against the contractor. We ended up having to part ways with those guys because we could never get the message across. And these were older guys. We could never seem to get the message across that your goal here is to be collaborative. It's to go out and if you see something, help this project move forward. Don't turn it into a contest of who can find the worst thing.
Right.
Focus on your duties and this project moving forward. there's still, believe it or not, a lot of guys like that out there, who feel that they are a badge wielding authority figure on the site, not a team member of the group. And that's the thing I'm really want to use some examples to try to overcome. The negatives, are that the attitude in the IOR office, the attitude in the contractor's office takes a dive when you have IORs who are purposely looking for things wrong to stick it to the contractor. Or we had one IOR who in a meeting said, I don't trust architects. Like, well, buddy, who you take your information, your instructions from. So it's things like that that have to be addressed and have to be stopped.
I don't trust us either, but
So anyway, any further comments on this before we move on to our next topic, our next party?
This is Bert again. It sounds like we could put another seminar on inspect to fail. So that could be the follow-up.
What not to do.
Scott Mackey, member of the committee. The second bullet point on your item number 3, consider in what order the material should be presented. I think we should discuss that.
Okay.
I think we have, an outline that identifies an introduction. I'll still try and figure out or get my head around how to arouse interest, but there will be a lot of interest because this is a very important subject, and people definitely want to hear about the best ways to go about doing this work. And then we roll into design professionals, which keeps me in front of the group, which is fine. And I roll out, I identify what my responsibilities are and who I impact and how I'm part of the team and what I'm looking for as part of the whole collaboration process. And then it goes, into the IOR and the testing. And then we go down into the owner's perspective and OSHPD field staff, and then a conclusion. I'm open for discussion on if that is a proper and best flow. Michael, I think you put this together. I have no issue with it, but I do want to at least have an open discussion about it so that we all feel that this is best. I guess an alternative could be is to put the owner up front, and have them kind of say, hey, this is my deal. This is my project. This is my money. These are the people I'm hiring. So maybe we'll put that out front. But I want to have an open discussion. I'm glad you put it on as an item. I just want some agreement as part of the committee and the supporting folks that are here to help, that we do feel that the presentation outline rolls as best as we think that this event should go.
Michael Davis, member of the board. Thank you, Scott. That was an important thought. It was a dilemma that I was in on how to what order to put this in. I ended up landing on just tentatively on the design professional because of a comment that Mr. Tokus had made a couple of meetings back, where he said that the success of a project rests on the shoulders of the design professional, probably first and foremost, or more than any other single party. So that's why I landed it first. But I also see a very strong case for ownership, because this is their project. This is their site. This is for them. So really, no one has a greater vested interest in the success of the project than the owner does. So maybe we'll open this up to discussion. Does anybody, what are your thoughts on that? What order do you think we should start off with? I think that the rest of the order, having OSHPD last, I was just saving that for last because that will focus somewhat on the field staff and others. The contractor, I had that second to last, but let's open it up for any thoughts or discussion from the board on that.
This is Bert Hurlbut, member of the board. I'm just curious, have we had a discussion on who we think the audience will be or should be? Is this going to be packed full of IORs and very few other, owners and designers, etc., or is this going to be pretty much a normal seminar where you get, a smattering of, 10, 20, 30% of each of the categories. I'm not sure.
This is Christopher, good morning. If we have a room full of IORs, we have failed. And the reason why we have failed is because of it's music to my ear, I guess, the discussions that we have been having the last 15 minutes. Let me give you my thoughts of what's really happening in our industry. Our industry is kind of different. I call it discombobulated compared to any other industries that they manufacture goods and products. And when let's take a look for a car. Okay, so again, so the car manufacturer, I guess in this case, they're responsible for the design. They're responsible for the manufacturing of the item. And they're responsible for the QA/QC. Why? I guess in this case is because their name, their warranties, so their fame and so on, okay, they're at stake. And thereby, okay, so they put a lot of emphasis in every step. In our industry, the owner goes to a design professional and says, I want to build it. And then discussion starts. And then you go through the programming, you go through what we call it in our line of work, human-centered design and others. What does the end beneficiary really needs, and we design around it. Put together documents. Now the question is, documents have to comply with the minimum building code requirements. And our job here, as the agency having jurisdiction, is to make sure that the building on paper, it complies with the minimum building code requirements and the intent of the statute. But that's on paper. So the next step is somebody has to build it. Now the owner has hired that design professional to represent them from the beginning to the end, because the owner doesn't have the expertise to deal with all the peculiarities of the whole process. And I'm going to emphasize this again. The owner has hired the design professional to represent it. And we had an example earlier of where the design professional, Joe Labrie, when he was on the other side of the equation, was boots on the ground, working with the entire team. That's what the design professional's job, responsibility, again, day one to the last day is. Contractor comes on board, and again, so it was discussed earlier, depends on their expertise, depends on their experience and so on. So now they're going to build it from paper to materialize it. It's not going to happen unless the owner has full representation. That representation comes now in the picture because all the design professionals oversight, and that's why the TIO is their responsibility. And thereby, so the team that actually is going to execute the QA/QC steps so that what's on paper materializes and it becomes the product that it will deliver the target performance level intended by the building code as well as the statute. So it's a team effort. And if those entities are not involved from day one to the last day, you're not going to deliver what's intended, I guess, in this case. And I'm sorry for my long discussion, I guess, so in this case, but should the owner go up front and say, I'm paying, this is what I want, this is what basically needs to be delivered? Maybe, so the way that Michael has it, maybe that's the best way, so because the owner now can step in front of the crowd and say, you heard, so all the required steps, the recipe, so that it takes for me, so as the owner, to get what I paid for.
I've got some comments on that. This is Joe Labrie with Oshpod. Chris, I've got some comments, but I know that Monica, I think you had your hand up here. So I don't want to step in front of you here.
Thank you. Good morning. I took off the hand because I heard that Chris basically answered the right way. So we are here because the facility needs something, right? So he's the owner. So that should be on the top of to begin this type of webinar. We are all here because the owner needs. And like Chris said, without the owner, without the project, they're not going to hire the designer. The contractor will not build, the inspector will not inspect, and we will not observe. So the owner should be first, and everybody should be part of this webinar. We might have probably later on more precise webinar specific to the owner, specific to the designer, specific to the contractor, specific to the IOR for their work. We need to train more, I believe, more the owner, because sometimes I feel that the owner drops the ball to the design professional because he's hiring the design professional. So all of a sudden gets detached, and we can all talk, each of us, we have our experience about the owner, designer, and so on. So is a group, is a teamwork, and we are here because of the facility. We are here because of the people. They come first, so the owner should start first, in my opinion.
I'll maybe throw a little bit of a contrarian view on this thing for all of you to consider, if I may. Every now and then, every so often, since I've been at Oshpot, I've observed that there are from time to time owners who don't care how the hell it gets done. Just get it done, architect. Glide sheet and still IOR. Testing lab, if I need one, if I get caught, then I'll deal with it. Doesn't happen very much, but every now and then it happens. Why do I bring this up? Because sometimes the motivations of those every now and then IOR owners, it can get in the way of what really needs to happen. What I, for one, would love to propose or see in the industry is a paradigm shift on the part of the architects, the design professional of record, to demand performance by the people involved on the projects. I was talking to an architect yesterday for something I was working on here. And the architect said, oh, sample reports on the TO, let's not even bother. We can't get those. Well, why can't you? Be the architect and say, look, you're not going to get this job. You're not going to be involved. I need your engagement and I need sample reports. Why can't that happen? I'll tell you why it's not happening. It's because the architects, God bless them, I think they mean well and they need to get the next job. But I think they acquiesce and say, okay, well, if that's just not the practice, I guess I won't make waves. I think that's detrimental, and I think it's something that we have to overcome. I think part of what we're struggling with in the industry, where every now and then we have these issues, is that people have done it that way for 20 years. How many of you guys have heard that, right? Yeah. It's like, I've always done it that way. Well, okay, well, that's good, but that's not today. And so I think part of what needs to be addressed, and the challenge for you, Scott, I think is as the architect on this, is, how do we shift the minds of architects so that they say, hey, I will be the general. I will make sure, not the general contractor, I want to be the general in charge of the administration of this project when it's under construction, and I will engage at every level and make sure it gets done the way it was supposed to. So I'll get off my soapbox. That's my 2 cents on that topic.
Well, this, Christoph, I'm glad that you're on your soapbox, because that's what this discussion is all about. Because again, the captain of the project, so in this case, the captain of the design team is the architect. So thereby it's their responsibility statutorily by their license, and I can keep going on and on and on, so to execute what's in the building code and what is actually required by the statute itself. And it's pretty explicit. I don't want to be back, okay, I'm going to be blatant about it, but I want to be back in 2009, where basically, I don't know if you remember what happened then, okay, so in this case, we went as far as having a legislative bill in order to fix the industry because, again, the owners were turning a blind eye. They were pushing, the design professionals to step aside. They were pushing the IORs to step aside so they can get the project, done, and so on. Do you remember that? We don't want to be in that position. So that's what the purpose of this whole seminar is about.
And that it's easy to always just assume all owners are Bert Hurlbut. And Bert, when I worked for you, when you were doing Stanford, you were a great owner's representative who held everybody's feet to the fire. We don't see that every day. And so, I realize you're moving towards retirement if you're not already there, but I wish every project had a Bert Hurlbut. And there's other examples of that type of leader that we wish we could have everywhere, but the reality of it is we don't get to have it everywhere.
Joe, this is Bert. Thank you very much. Your earlier discussion reminds me of watching some of these old TV shows of architects being master builders back in the cathedral building days. And I think slowly it's morphed over to architects are now master observers. Yeah. And we just got to get away from that and go back to master builders again. That's the way it should be.
And interestingly enough, the regulations, the way they're written, really does give the authority to the architects, the engineers.
Exactly.
Michael Davis, member of the board. Can I make a suggestion, just listening to everyone, for the order that we present in? What if we were to do this? First, ownership. Second, design professional of record, where Scott really emphasizes a number of the points that you made, Joe, that being probably the meatiest of the elements in this webinar. Third, the contractor. Fourth, the IOR. Fifth, OSHPD, the order that things happen in. It's ownership engages designs, contractor comes on and builds, the IOR inspects, OSHPD comes in and checks things. What if we did the workflow approach?
This is Scott Mackey, member of the committee. I support that. I think that is the best flow because as you just described, that is how it works. I'll take on the challenge to pick on my peers for not being that master builder, that captain of the team, that responsible party. Having been in this industry for over 38 years, I've seen where it's gone. And I see it consistently, and I know why it's happening. There's a number of factors and variations, but it doesn't short the responsibility at all. It really needs to be emphasized, and it really needs to be put out there that, and I'm going to use some language, but damn it, people, step up. This is your job. This is what your profession is about. You need to get on the ball and get the job done. Lead the team, take charge, do what needs to happen in order to make this work. And yes, obviously, immediately following the owner, thank the owner for selecting professionals that know what they're doing, know how to do it, and that are willing to step up and take charge. And, despite every element that deters us from that goal, it doesn't matter. We still have to do it. And it's part of the responsibility to lead that team and to make sure it gets done. And I agree with some of the statements that have been said earlier. The architects tend to step back and just be an observer and let people walk all over them. And it's got to stop. So.
What's kind of interesting, Joe Labrie, OSHPD, what's kind of interesting, there's a disparity that I think rarely gets called out, particularly not in public meetings like this one. And that disparity is the regulations give so much authority to those architects and the engineers. Yet, the flip-flop is when it's under construction, it's the influence and that authority seems to have been relegated to the contractor of all people, which makes no sense, right? In fact, I think the regulations go out of their way to make sure that doesn't happen. Yet reality is the contractors are saying, this is how it's getting done. If it's working, great. But where it's not working, there's got to be some intervention on the part of the designers.
Well, and this is Scott Mackey, member of the committee. This is where it's going to come into the delivery method as well. Yeah. Because design build is really in some ways a very positive direction, but in other ways, really not positive in the fact that the contractors are literally taking that level of responsibility and ownership out of the DPOR's hands. And because, and they tell them what they want them to do. And, you know, although I'm a big proponent of design build and its delivery process, you talk about the codes and the regulations are one thing, but the legality of the contractual responsibility then becomes something else. And that's what's driving this wedge in this industry. And that has to be dealt with, but that's, you know, go ahead.
This is Chris Lucas. And I don't think, I guess, you are going to be hard on your peers and so on. I guess I'm going to quote you. So what Steve Jobs said, your job, Scott, is not to be easy on your peers, but is to make them better. That's what your job is. Yes. So we have great respect for design build. We're not going to question the delivery, but we're going to question the final product. And the final product, okay, so basically has to be delivered under the responsibility, stamp, and signature of the design professional. As simple as that.
I think I'll make this comment, Joe LaBrie, I'll make this comment and then I'll try to be quiet, okay? The nature of this particular discussion, it could be really inflammatory. In the reality of it is, it's easier to just go along to get along. The reality of it is easier to do a presentation that lays out a bunch of stuff in the code and how everybody should act perfectly and stuff. I don't know how that gets managed, Michael. I don't know how that gets managed, Scott. All I can tell you is that these conversations rarely happen, and they certainly don't happen in public venues because they do stir up emotion, I think. So good luck. We're here to help.
Thank you, Joe.
Good luck.
Well, unless there's any other thoughts on the order, are we agreed that we'll present it in the order of ownership, design professional, contractor, IOR, OSHPD? Okay. So I'll the master schedule, the master outline, I will redo that according to that order. We have talked about, if we can now backtrack to where we started by talking about the material for the inspector of record testing lab. And I think we're agreed that I didn't really talk much about the testing lab. That needs to be developed for our next meeting. So now let's move on. If maybe it'd be beneficial if we move on into the order that we're going to go. If we could move to the slide for ownership. There we go. Excuse me. So Gary's not here today. I'll want to open this up to the wisdom of the group since I'm the newbie around here. Do we want to talk about this as a group and get some ideas on paper, or do we want to hold this off to when Gary is here with his material on our next meeting?
This is Scott Mackey. I'd make a recommendation that Bert, if you'd be willing to contribute your experience and side of perspective on this, it would really help the group. Right?
Sure, thank you. I guess the collaborative inspection approach to me just means a successful inspection program. And I'd like to work the word success into this more and more, and maybe even have another run at the name, call it inspection for success or successful inspection or something. But to me, it just means you're going to be successful in getting these things accomplished. And the big thing is you can see a flow in the schedule that if areas get completed on time and they're inspected, the inspections come in favorable, and you can move on to the next trade, you get a rhythm on the job site, and it's invaluable to just keep that moving. So to me, that's what this inspection program is. And it just means success at the end of the day. You want me to keep going? Why is it important?
Please do so.
Because, okay, so one of the things is quality, that if you've got a good, program for your QA/QC, I think at the end of the day, your quality of installations, your quality material, well, not materials, they're specified to begin with, but your quality of installations is enhanced. You're going to have less leaks. You're going to have just less bad things going wrong at the end of the day. So to me, it's just a higher quality building. And that's what I really strive for. I can only contribute. As the owner contribute, he's engaged all the time. Give me an example that when we were at Stanford, Joe, I'm not sure if you were in any part of the OAC meetings, but we had two things that were just extremely important to our program. And the first one was safety. So we would have the entire team, come together. The first topic every week was safety. We talked about whether there were any incidents, near misses, any problems, et cetera, et cetera. And it was a thorough discussion, and everyone had to be there. So we would not have people wandering late to miss the first part. So that was the first part. The second part was the QA/QC, and the IOR was there. And what I find very, very important is that you make this stuff visible. So I had the IOR spout out metrics for the particular week. And he'd say, okay, this week, the last 5 days or 6 days, whatever, we had 407 inspections, which was an average of X per day. And then we would look back 2 weeks and 3 weeks to see what the running total was. And that was just to get the number of inspections. And then he would move into the number of successful inspections. And our success was to have it close on the first inspection request. So every week, everyone would hear that. You could hear trends that, this week we had more inspections than the previous week, but yet the inspection rate stayed the same. And that's good. If the inspection rate starts going down, why? And we would ask questions. So it was so important to us that we had it up front. When we finally concluded that, then we moved into the rest of the project, which would be schedule and problems, changes, et cetera, et cetera.
Bert, I have a question, if I can.
Yes.
Joe Labrie, Oshpot. Did you ever have inspections that did not pass and it was because it was built wrong?
Oh, yes, many times.
And so the group, the contractors or whoever's involved in that were the ones who were holding the ball, not the IOR for not approving it.
Right. But once you find out that it's non-compliant and it's not going to be accepted, it's got to be removed. We had a lot of chipping hammers out there, things that just didn't come in right. And we just removed it because we couldn't spend time fighting, trying to say, let's see if we can get it accepted. You can't do that. You got to keep moving. So
the IOR didn't get painted with a brush that made them look like they were an obstacle. It was more about whoever was building it wrong had to perform, right?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
So, and one of the ways you do that is to make all this stuff visible. So, as I said, we had these things visible right at the beginning of the meetings, but just as you walked into a trailer, we had very large graphics on inspection rates by subcontractors. And all of a sudden you see a lot of subcontractors have very high numbers, and all of a sudden 2 or 3 have low numbers, and you go, what's going on? And, they're working on it, or they're trying to get better. They're trying to, but you gotta make this stuff visible to improve upon it. So, and all of a sudden after a couple of weeks, you see these non-compliant contractors starting to pick the ball up and getting their numbers up to where they should be. What are some of the obstacles? I think everyone can talk about the obstacles, and probably the biggest one is just communication. That if you can't get people to talk to each other, then that's a huge obstacle, and we've got to bridge through that. And I think that should be some of this seminar, just to get people to talk. So, and I'll stop talking.
Thank you. Michael Davis, member of the board. Thank you, Bert. That was excellent points there. I made note of several of everything that I could keep pace with. I really appreciate that insight. Any other thoughts on ownership for us to take note of before we move on to the next point? But I'll pass these notes on.
Michael, this Bert again. I do have a question. I want to direct it toward Chris. He's busy right now. So just, if we can just sit for 1 second.
Certainly.
This is Scott Mackey, member of the committee. Kurt, Bert, you made reference to a chicken hammer?
Chipping hammer.
The what?
Chipping hammer. Okay.
It's chipping stuff.
Yeah, we
I-
removed some concrete. Yeah.
Okay.
Chicken. I didn't hear the same thing.
Thought I heard
Oh.
chicken hammer, and I'm like, I've never heard that expression, so I wanted to find out what a chicken hammer was, but it's a chipping hammer, okay.
CHIPPING.
I thought you said chicken.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, no. Okay, so here's an issue I want to bring up and see whether we should talk about this or not, but it's incentives.
Yeah.
And as an owner, the owner has the ability to give incentives. I think there's probably some owners that can't if they're a district hospital. I'm not sure if the UC is allowed to do that. They didn't for a long time. But as an owner, you can give incentives, and they're very powerful. And if you set the metrics and you work toward these metrics and get them up there, and you can pay out these incentives, it's a great tool to keep your success rates high. So no problems with talking about incentives to a crowd?
what was the point to hire the team to begin with?
Well,
Just ask
you
a
get-
theoretical
you
question.
wanna get a project.
Do you think that basically you're gonna get paid for a good job, or are you gonna get paid to get for an acceptable job? Well, I mean, I'm playing right now, but
Okay, good point. Everyone has a batting average, and you want to assemble a team that has got a pretty good batting average as a team. And then I think there's ways that you can improve those batting averages. And I mean, we see it in sports, it's incentives, bonuses, you make the all-star team, you get extra money. If you make the World Series, you get extra money or whatever. So I think incentives, and it's a great tool. So you have your basic batting average, you want to get a good team, and then you want to improve upon it. So,
I made a problem discussing that.
Yeah.
Even though I understand your point.
you
But yeah,
understand,
we see it, I'm saying.
you know why I have hard time with that.
what was that? No.
You understand why I have hard time with that. Is it a good point? Okay, so yes, okay, so but is it part of this conversation? Why were you hired? You basically went through a competitive process to be hired, and you were hired based on, okay, so again, okay, so that you're going to deliver an A-type job, okay, so in this case. I'm just playing the contrarian right now, so.
Okay, I agree. You set what you want as the basic minimums, and then I think you got a chance to improve upon them. Well, people, it's like I said, it's an incentive, a bonus.
A lot of them do it.
I think also, I think one of the things we got to talk about today, and I haven't heard it, is what is good.
What is good?
What is good for inspection?
Finish the project with no change orders, finish the project with basically on time, finish the project with no tearing things down because they were built wrong. I can keep going.
That's not good. That's one is impossible, and it's just it's a dream. So you got to set realistic parameters for what is good. So Michael, on your jobs, do you track first-time inspection requests that get closed? And if you do, what do you consider good on a job? 80% or 60 or 95?
Michael Davis, member of the board. We do track that. We track
Okay.
that whether we're using the software or not. And I mean, obviously, we're always shooting for 100%, but I would say anything 90 and above, the team as a whole considers that successful, because there are going to be some failed inspections which were not malicious in nature. There were just errors made and not caught until that point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So hopefully that answers your question, Bert. Yeah.
So I think that we've got to, tell that to the crowd that, 90, we set 95% for incentives. So, yeah, I think a lot of people can get 90. You put some money out in front, sometimes you can get that up to 95%. It's great. So I don't know if we want to talk about that or not, but we have time think about it, so.
Yeah, let's think about it.
Yeah, so, but I do think we have to say, you know, this represents good and it's 95%, you know, fair, 75% maybe, but that means, you know, return, it's not good. So,
Exactly.
so who should discuss that? Would that be under the IOR part or?
Yeah, Michael Davis, member of the board. I think that that percentage could be weaved into the IOR and testing lab portion because that's where that's going to happen at that level.
This is Scott Mack,
Great.
member of the committee. I agree because you guys are the ones that track it.
Yeah.
That really is the best place for it. We all should be aware of it. And I think as Bert said, you know, put it up on the board in front of everybody at you know, the meetings so that everybody can see how the performance is going is important. Because yes, you know, to be able to define what is good is important, and it's important to track it and keep it in front of those that are there. Again, as Michael said, there will be those occasions when, you know, when there is a fail, it just didn't go together the way it was supposed to, and we caught it and it needed to be corrected, and it's unfortunate, but you know, our goal is to minimize as much as possible, but not to look past it, not to ignore or take that responsibility to say, hey, oops, we got a mess up right here. We got to fix this.
I will say that Joe Labrie, Oshpot, I will say that the conversation of incentives is something we have to be really, really careful about. Since I've been at Oshpot, we have encountered once or twice conditions where their incentives applied to the IOR, and that's not okay.
Oh,
Right. So however those incentives are built,
Now you understand why
the IOR should not be incentivized to approve everything, right? Or it should go without saying, but I said it.
the best money can buy.
All right. Michael Davis, board member. Do we feel like we've got some good points here and ready to move on to the next section? All right. So our third section as part of this topic is the contractor. Design professional. Sorry, Scott. Design professional. Let's move on to that one.
I'm still arousing interest, so I'm
Yes.
sticking on this here.
Yes. So looking at these, thank you, Joe. Looking at these points, what does the collaborative inspection approach mean to the, we're at design professional? Mean to the design professional?
So, you know, I think it's important to point out what the responsibility of the DPOR is before I go into what the collaborative approach is. You know, we are the captain of the team. I am going to encourage the DPORs and the audience to step up and take charge. I know that there's challenges in front of every design professional through the course of project, but the critical stage of any project isn't the programming of it. It isn't necessarily the planning of it. It does have a lot to do with the permitting and approval process, but it's most important in the delivery of the project, that it actually is going together the way that it was intended, the way that it was documented, the way that it was approved. And without that follow through, you're basically handing it off to someone else to be responsible for. And that's not what this role and responsibility is about. So taking it from there and creating a collaborative team approach to this is we need to understand what everybody's role and responsibility is in the process and to be able to support each of those. But again, as the captain of the team, you are the driving factor. You are the one that is setting the standard. You're creating an environment of high level of communication between the team members. And it's about, you know, working together as a cohesive unit. Now, I'm a competitive ice hockey player, and we have a captain on the team. And the captain leads the team in any number of ways. We have a coach that's separate, but you know, in my world, we don't have coaches because it's a beer league and we still have fights and you know, everybody's got to work the next day. We wish we had coaches, but we don't. But we do have a team captain. And the captain of the team sets the standard for what everybody is looking forward to and at. The captain isn't always the best player on the team, but the captain knows who his players are and knows when to reach out to them, tap them on the shoulder and say, you need to step up now, or you need to hold off on what you're pushing at this moment because we've got others to consider. And that's what a captain of a team needs to look at and really needs to perform at. And that's why the DPOR in this situation has to be the leader of this group. The owner has hired us because they have trust in us, they have faith in us, they know we are responsible for the outcome of their project. And so we need to be the ones that are in the forefront of that whole effort. Why is it important? Well, obviously the important part is to make sure that this building goes together exactly as it was intended for the use that it was designed for the budget and the schedule that the owner expected, so that they can move forward on day one when it is given a certificate of occupancy to proceed to move that whole effort forward and complete. The goal, as Bert has said, is success. We all want success in this process, and every member of the team is responsible for that success. You can't win the game, you can't win the project completion if you're not focused on success. Any deterrence to that effort will sideline and make the effort and everyone's involvement miserable. Nothing's worse than losing. I can tell you, we've been losing about 3 games in a row now. Our team is deeply frustrated, but we will find ways to persevere and work together and be better as a team. And sometimes we have to dig deep into our own personalities, our own focuses to find that goal for success. I can't stress the importance of working together collaboratively with the full team as components of that team, because there will always be obstacles, there will always be challenges, but if we're a well-oiled machine, a well-trained and collaborative team, we can overcome those obstacles and we can work together in a proactive manner to be able to deliver the project on time and successfully for the intended outcome.
Good.
Did I miss anything?
Well said.
Very good. Michael Davis, member of the board. Any other discussion by the board on this? That was pretty comprehensive on my opinion, but is any other thoughts that we should be cognizant of? All right.
No arousal.
No, I gotta tell you, I really love the analogy to the hockey team. Makes it real world. I think that if you can integrate that, I don't know if you can or if you want to, but bring it into the presentation of information, it just really catches your attention. It caught mine. It's like, oh, wait, what? Well, you kind of had me at beer league, but but it really is a great way to make the point. So, yeah.
Thank you, Joe. This is Scott Mackey, member of the committee. And you know, even though I did reference fighting, we don't want to encourage fighting on job sites.
Good point.
So I will probably just, pass that over. People do want to know, do they fight in the pros level? Do you still fight at your level? Yeah, we still have fights in our level. But, again, like I said, the important thing is we all get up and go to work the next day. So we gotta be respectful to some degree. Anyways, I'm glad you all felt that was appropriate and comprehensive. So thank you.
Excellent. Michael Davis, member of the board. Thank you, Scott. And remember, for each of these topics that we're discussing today, continue to think about it. We'll finish these other items off, but remember that if you have any thoughts come to you, epiphanies, anything, make a note of it. In our next committee meeting, which is a month from now, we can always add to this and enhance any one of these parts at that time. So let's move on to our, we've discussed ownership, we've discussed design professional. Number 3 in the presentation will be the contractor, subcontractor. Cody isn't with us today, but do we want to share a few, do a little brainstorming as a group on some thoughts for a contractor? I think it would be beneficial if we did, and we could hand that off, these thoughts off to Cody to see if he's got it as part of his development. My own thoughts on this, what does it mean to a contractor? I would say engaging the IOR, not holding the IOR off as somebody he doesn't want in the room. My brother often uses the expression that if you invite the IOR to the table as part of the family, he'll act like part of the family. But if you keep him separate in another room all the time, he'll feel alienated and he'll act accordingly. So I think being transparent and open with the IOR is an important contribution to that. And then, of course, following the instructions as provided in the design documents. If the contractor does not understand that, if the contractor doesn't think it's buildable, take that to your design professional early in the process and get clarification. I like to use the expression that the building is the final product, the physical manifestation of the conceptual designs of the architect and engineer. Only they can interpret what those design intents are. So the contractor, who has a very important role of making these concepts into a physical product, has a huge task ahead of him. But he must rely on those design professionals to answer all of those questions and not take it upon himself. I think that should be mentioned. How can contractors contribute to collaborative inspection approach? Again, engaging with the IORs early, mock-ups, first in place inspections, all this proactive elements that include showing those things to the OSHPD field staff. Let them see those mock-ups, let them see those first in place. And what are some obstacles that can be overcome? Well, a bad set of drawings is an obstacle. An owner who's pressing them too hard to just get it done no matter what. And a obstinate or un-team-like IOR could be an obstacle. Or perhaps overly a field staff who is pushing their own pet peeves versus the code and what the drawings are showing. The opinion does not have a place in this of the field staff, nor the IOR. Neither should be trying to enforce their own ideas or opinions. Those are obstacles that I see the contractor has to overcome. But I'd like to open that up to the group now. Any further thoughts on that?
Michael, this is Bert Hurlbut, member of the board. I think another obstacle is you sometimes see general contractors choosing subcontractors that are either inexperienced with OSHPD rules, work, or they're out-of-state contractors and never had any exposure to them. And that always turns into a real mess at the end of the day. So, something that these general contractors got to make sure that they hire good, experienced subcontractors.
Excellent. Thank you.
This is Chris Douglas. At some point in time, okay, so we need to make it clear, these are not the OSHPD rules. Chapter 17 is Chapter 17. All the requirements for testing and inspection are in the code. Yes, they need to be enforced.
Yeah, but you make them do it, though.
No.
That's the bad part. Come on.
The building code has to be implemented as a whole. So you cannot pick and choose of what you want to implement in this case.
Yeah.
I was going to say, kind of along what Chris was going on, I think contractors know how to build. They know how to build everything and anything. But there's also this other piece of it, which is what do the regulations say? You know, what is the environment of construction of hospitals and who are the different entities that are involved? Those can become obstacles if they're not familiar with what all that is. And they don't, you know, apply any critical thinking about how to navigate it. It can become an obstacle.
Thank you, Joe. Any other thoughts?
This is Scott Mackey, member of the committee. I think it's important to take Cody's information and put it in here because there's a lot of good discussion around this subject matter, but without Cody's direct perspective on what he sees as being the issues that he deals with regularly, we're not doing ourselves a full service right now. Again, it's that, you know, missing team player right now that you know is slowing us down a little bit, but we'll pick it up. I know Cody's very adept at this, and we'll seamlessly slide right into this role. I do, however, really like what you were talking about in terms of AOC or OAC, and maybe we should be relabeling that OAC I. And really, you know, I mean, really, you know, using this as an opportunity to say, hey guys, you know, not just the owner, the architect, and the contractor, but you need the inspector team as part of that group. And we ought to really be pushing the strength of that focus to say, you really need to be looking at this, you know, in a more cohesive and you know, expansive view. To bring that team partner in on that discussion, because in all honesty, the owner is looking for outcomes, the architect is looking to drive the process, the contractor's trying to get it built, and without that fourth partner, you're kind of going and you're kind of spinning wheels, kind of going in circles, and not really engaging what can be a detrimental consideration if you don't have that team member as part of that open discussion. So perhaps we roll that out as part of this concept, OACI, and let's look at that, you know.
Very good.
Without the inspector, we cannot get done. We cannot get there, simply.
Exactly, Chris.
Okay. Very good. Very good. So I made some notes here that we can supply to Cody. But we'll eagerly await, because he's the expert on this subject matter of this little subcommittee, eagerly await his notes on this on our next meeting. Unless there's any other comments that we want to bring out on the contractor, we can move on to, we already talked about Inspector of Record Testing Lab. We kicked it off with that. So that leaves us our final element, and that is OSHPD field staff. Monica, or maybe I'll pass that off to you if you had some thoughts you'd like to share on that.
Yes, of course I have thoughts. It's me, right? I have a tiny presentation. Would you like for me to share?
Please.
Or, okay.
Please do.
Okay.
Yes.
I need to be authorized to share. It's a tiny thing. Thank you.
Okay,
Let
Monica.
me know when you can see. Can you see?
Okay, we can see.
Okay. So we all talk about, we are all with the same thought. Which one is? Usually when inspection service unit, we have some presentation, some webinar. When it's my part, I always show this one as much as I can because, and we are saying, we are here because of the facility. We are here because of the owner, right? And who is going to help the facility, the building, to be with the final product, the project to succeed, is all of us. Is the design professional, is the contractor, is the inspector, and is us, OSHPD. We are all with the same goal, different perspective, but we are all on the same goal, and we agree on this one, correct? So that being said, what we as inspection service unit, we issue tons of tip of the day. There are some that they are like the elite, the very good tips. This one was one of that I would like to include as much as possible in this type of webinar, that everybody, we have our portion into a project. The inspector, yes, inspects, but don't forget, and we already said, the designer has certain responsibility. One of these is to observe the construction. The contractor also can issue an observation report. When OSHPD goes to the job site, so when I go to the job site, I'm not looking only for the inspector. I want to talk to the contractor. I want to talk to the designer as much as possible, to be all together in the same conversation. Because if I have a question, maybe the IOR doesn't have the answer, and the contractor maybe doesn't have the answer, and there is design professional that has the answer. So it's a teamwork, and like is a teamwork as documentation, as compliance officer. When I go to the job site, I really truly would like to talk to everybody and have everybody engaged. And in my portion, in a facility that have been assigned, it is wonderful because I see this collaborative work. There is no point fingers. There is like stepping up and resolve whatever there is, and it's fun. And that is the beauty. It's not like Scott said, yes, we fight. You said, Scott, that the fight, the things. There is passion. And so the fight, Scott, that you're talking about, maybe would be better to say passion. But when everybody engages, that you will see the success of the project. If there is anybody passive, the project fails. That is for what I observe when I go to the job site. Another tip of the day that inspection service unit issued to help the inspector if they don't have their proper daily report, we provided a voluntary daily report. Why? Because these are the typical questions that we ask when we go to the job site. That are always the same questions. There is no surprise. And so when the inspector might not be prepared, the inspector maybe doesn't know the code requirement. So everybody has their own responsibility. And what we observe at the job site is what the status of the project. And again, engaging everybody, not only the inspector. So like Chris also mentioned, there are code requirements. Everybody needs to follow the code requirements. We also need to follow the code requirements for the portion that we are responsible. So there are the drawings that needs to be approved, specifications that needs to be approved. Then the contractor needs to build per approved construction document. And then there is the IOR that needs to inspect. Of course, the inspection pass if the contractor builds per approved construction document. But chances are it doesn't happen that often. So this is basically what is the cycle, what really happens. There is maybe a back and forth between what needs to be built. And so the contractor might have, like Joe was saying, the contractor knows how to build. Sometimes doesn't want to really follow the rules. But if there is a collaborative work, the contractor might say to the designer, look, there is this better approach. Talking to the owner, maybe this one will save time, will save money. And so there is a teamwork from that portion that needs to maybe to have new details, new approach, and that is the change order that they will submit to us for approval. And of course, when there is the construction portion, of course, construction and schedule, they are tied together. The panic goes, of course, when the inspection doesn't pass, there is a delay of the project. So again, it's all a teamwork, is collaborative. So yes, it is about inspection to pass, but it's project to succeed in the overall, because it's everything together. What, again, as OSHPD, what we observe at the job site is not only about the inspections, is bigger than that. And when it's collaborative, is amazing. When personally I receive the observation report from the designer, is wonderful. It's not just the daily report from the IOR. I also received the observation report from the designers. Is wonderful. There is some team that really spoils me. So that is what would be the best approach to have a project to succeed. Is not just the IOR, right? So that is my 2 cents.
Thank you, Monica. Appreciate that. Appreciate the presentation as well. Slides. Excellent. Continuing to keep this open now to the subcommittee, is there any other thoughts on OSHPD and how they can contribute toward an inspect to pass mentality or a collaborative inspection approach, or any of the obstacles?
So Scott Mackey, member of the committee, I want to thank Monica for what you put together. It was really helpful. I also want to point out something that you mentioned about the contractor can present options and alternatives to solutions that could help and benefit the project. And I want to stress that that is always valued. That's always appreciated. That we, again, as a team, as a partnership with our builders, design professionals don't always know, every single process and every single solution that's available. We have ones that we know that have proven themselves and that, work effectively, but always being open to having a discussion and an opportunity to consider alternates with the build team is really important to do. Obviously, it needs to come back through and, be confirmed that it, meets the code, but that's the team's responsibility. That's the DPOR's responsibility on the forefront, but working with the OSHPD field staff as well to say, hey, look, this was brought up. Here's an opportunity. This is my interpretation of how it fits into the code approved documents, and, do you support that and agree with that? And I think that that's a really good point, that we need to point that out as part of this process, that it isn't, these are approved documents. This is the only way it can be done. And we're just going to push forward until it is done this way, that it still needs to be collaborative. Again, that's what we're going for here. Collaborative towards success. And, if everybody can come together and bring those ideas together and work through them, it's going to be successful in the end. And that's the goal.
Excellent. Thank you, Scott. Any other thoughts from the committee?
This is Richard Tannehill. Just want to add to some obstacles that we see is basically contractors not building to construction documents. It's huge. EPORs not on site, owners not on site. IORs that don't write up deficiencies. And that's how documents came up earlier. So those are some obstacles that we see daily.
I would add to that, Richard, one of the biggest obstacles is when there's no collaboration. Ironically, it's, if everybody's doing their own thing, it doesn't really work so well.
Scott Mackey, member of the committee. Can we have an open conversation about owners and the owners' representatives and their availability? There's been a number of projects where I've felt that the owner has dumped that responsibility onto an IOR team to represent them, and not being at the table and not being represented as part of the process. I know Bert is the exception to that, and Joe made a great example of that. But there are owners out there that hire an IOR, team, individual, whatever it may be, and just dumps that responsibility off onto them. And I don't think that's right. I don't think that's appropriate. And I think more owners need to take responsibility and be there, at that project site consistently. We can complain about the DPORs not being there, and I've made reference to reasons why they don't. But I think some responsibility needs to be put back on the owner as well, to be represented there and to speak their mind and be part of the team and part of that process, and not just, well, we hired these guys to do this for us, so we're just going to let them do that.
If I can address that, Joe Labrie Oshpot, I think there's two parts to that, right? There's the assertion on the part of the owner onto the IOR, and then the other one is the IOR who willingly accepts roles that are outside of his responsibilities. Both are out of bounds.
Very good. Very good. All good input. Thank you.
Does anyone else in the group have response to that owner's representative side of things? Chris, Richard, do you see that often? Is that something that you guys deal with?
Yeah, Chris temporarily left the room, but he's a strong advocate of the owner getting involved constantly. He's always beating that drum. The owner needs to be on site. The owner needs to be there to make decisions. It's their project.
Michael Davis, member of the board. I'm fortunate right now in all the big projects that we are engaged in, we have very active ownership in each case. But earlier in my career, I had plenty of times when there was absentee owner, and it was kind of tossed on me to some degree to represent them. It put me in a bad spot, in a difficult spot. I think it's a real consideration. It's worthy of it being brought up in this forum, I believe. But I'm fortunate right now, I'm not contending with that. And I think I know now as being a little bit older and more experienced, how I could deal with it versus when I was younger, because I started in this industry when I was in my late 20s. So it's been a long time, and it can put an IOR in a terrible position.
Well, in Joe Labrie Oshpot, I think in addition to that, I think it compromises public safety.
Yeah.
And that's what concerns me the most.
Yeah.
As the entity who certifies and recertifies and trains and monitors IORs, we cannot knowingly allow as Oshpot IORs to assume those types of responsibilities without some action on our part to correct it.
Scott Mackey, member of the committee. Michael, you keyed in on one aspect of it, and you said big projects.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're looking at all projects.
Right.
Okay. The bigger the project, the bigger the risk.
Right.
So yes, the owners are going to be there in full force because it's a big nut.
Right.
Okay. It's your smaller projects that they just let slide.
Yeah.
And those are just as important, safety, et cetera, to have that responsibility and literally ownership of that work. And it's got to be consistent across the board. Yes, I agree on larger projects. They're definitely there. But like I said, bigger project, bigger risk. They want to avoid as much as possible. Smaller projects, they see like, how much do I really need to be involved? But yet they absolutely do. And it's a key component of it. Bert, I'll put back to you if you have any follow-up comments on that and where you see if there's a line drawn there or, any consistency that can be expected from the owner side.
No, I think it's got to be an engaged owner without a doubt. You're right. I'd be willing to bet that the smaller projects probably take up more time from everyone than these larger projects. And You know, it's a shame. So it's the ones that you don't really pay attention to that really eat your lunch at the end of the day. So yeah, no additional comments.
Yeah, Scott Mackey, member of the committee. Yes, Bert, you're right. The interesting thing is sometimes the smaller projects drag out and cost more in delays and overruns and whatnot for that very reason. They're not considered significant. They just kind of take a course on their own. And it even may come back to the general contractor who's hired to do a smaller project who may be less experienced. I think these are key points that, we should be focusing on in this discussion, that it doesn't matter about the size of the project. That all of these components of this collaborative approach should be consistent across all levels and scale of projects.
Michael Davis, member of the board. I know about a year and a half ago, the ISU did put some information out there because on some of these smaller projects, you see how owners would like the IOR to be a PM/CM/IOR and just handle it. And I think that's what the ISU's intention was, to put a stop to that. So some of that information that was published at that time might be useful to reference or reiterate on this as part of either the IOR section of where to draw the line boundaries of the collaborative approach, because some IORs may interpret it and say, well, I'm trying to be collaborative. I'm trying to do what I'm asked to do here. Well, here's where your line is. So we might want to incorporate that into the IOR section, unless we want to put it into the OSHPD field staff section, or whatever the wisdom of the group dictates here.
Scott Mackey, member of the committee. I would appreciate it, Joe, if you could distribute that information to the group.
You bet.
We can all take the parts of that documentation and build it into our presentation, and not just put it on one side.
Yeah.
That's what I would recommend, is being able to take that, yes, valuable tools. Here we go again. We're delving back into the media and the materials that we've put forth to the public. And, we can utilize reference to those and literally use them as part of this webinar as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you could do that, Joe, it'd be greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Good points there for us to consider as part of this. Any other thoughts on the contractor? Okay.
We were on the staff.
The field staff, I'm sorry, field staff. I'm looking at the wrong, it's out of order on this other.
I know.
document now, so. Okay, so that should bring us to a conclusion of item number 3 on our agenda. So we want to, one final time, on any of the matters that we have been discussing here regarding the material for the different parties related to the construction project, or the order we're presenting in. I think we've finalized that order very well. Is there any other input from the committee or OSHPD? Is there any input from the public at this time on any of those matters that we've been discussing?
Plenty, but can't regurgitate it now.
Okay. Well, we'll be continuing to, there's be more opportunities for input as we have our next meeting, as we develop the material further and get it all put together. Let's move on to item number 5, and that is planning.
Michael,
Yes.
sorry, this is Veronica, Executive Director. I wanted to just let you know that we're past the 90-minute mark. We can keep going if the committee agrees to, or we can take a short break at this time.
Okay. We have very little to cover, just a few minutes. I would suggest we continue on unless we, okay. All right, let's continue on.
Can Scott Mackey, member of the committee, can we just make note that there is no agenda item number 4?
Right,
Yes.
that was me naming. Yep. Okay.
We're on to 5.
Yes, we're on to 5. And that was our future dates. I think I made note of those somewhere here. It's not there. Okay, so we're going to be meeting in a month. Let me pull up my calendar. I wanted to see if we could just set a goal for what we want to accomplish specifically at that meeting. So that will be March 27th.
Mhm.
Dates are up now.
Okay, there we go. March 27th. I'd like to suggest that we make it a goal that day to have pulled together the information we discussed today. And Veronica, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the best avenue for that would be for each of the subcommittee members to send their information to the support staff, and then the support staff could send it to me, and I could implement it into a master outline that could then be redistributed back to the group in preparation for the meeting on the 27th. Is that a procedurally correct approach?
Yes, that is correct, Michael.
Okay, very good. So I'd like to suggest that we do that. And then when we meet on the 27th, let's take another look at the outline and see how it flows in a very rough, very basic mock delivery. Then on April 24th, we would want to refine that and start preparing ourselves. As we do a mock delivery, we're going to find things that don't make sense or that need to be inserted. So there'll be plenty of work to do on that March 27th, and then probably even on April 24th. It is my opinion that we'll need additional dates, especially practice, for delivery of the webinar. But let's cross that bridge after we've got an outline more solidified. Are there any other thoughts regarding these dates?
Scott Mackey, member of the committee, in respect and appreciation of all that staff does for us, let's set a due date for these materials to be submitted.
Okay.
And I would recommend a due date of March 24th. That would be Monday before the Thursday meeting, giving Evie enough time to compile the information together and distribute it back to you.
That sounds good. Thank you, Scott. Any other thoughts from the group on these dates or objectives for each of these dates? Okay. Any input from the public on this? Well, I believe that brings us to item number 6, comments from the public subcommittee members on issues not on this agenda. So first we'll go to the subcommittee. Excuse me. Are there any comments on items that we did not cover in today's agenda?
Scott Mackey, member of the committee. There was a request for a public member to join this group that was put forward, and we're looking for a report back from staff as to whether or not that is acceptable or approvable.
This is Veronica Hugh, Executive Director of the Board, and we cannot approve that at this time, not for this subcommittee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any comments from Oshpod on items not on this agenda? Anything from the public? Any comments or input from the public on items not on this agenda? Okay. Well, I think that concludes today's meeting. So unless there's anything else, we'll consider this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for your participation and your hard work in preparing.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. I didn't want it.
I've worked on a lot of hospitals, and this